I'm using this video to introduce you to how I solve equations and how I encourage my students to do it. It's kind of a universal approach that will solve any equation, pretty much. First of all, we ask, are there any fractions? If there are, we get rid of them. Second, we say, are there any brackets? If there are, we get rid of them. Then third, we have to say, is it an x question or an x squared question? There's a lot of subtlety here, and it's not quite that simple, but it is that simple initially. Once you get onto like higher things like A level, especially like second year of A level, it becomes a bit more nuanced, but it's basically still just is it x or x squared. If it's an x squared, we simply try and rearrange it until we get x equals. And with a lot of students, I encourage you to write, so if you've got a question, I encourage you to just write at the bottom x equals, just to remind you what you're aiming for. If it's just an x. If it's an x squared, then we make it equal to 0, and then we factorize it. And if you can't factorize, you use the quadratic formula. I haven't added that, so I'm keeping it simple. Because there's other things going on as well, like, for example, we could write in a little kind of circle to the side here, simplify. So at any stage, if you see something that you can simplify, simplify it. But to keep this a nice, easy process to remember, I've sort of slimmed it down to 5 things. I'm just going to do 3 examples just to give you an idea about how it works. So example number 1, let's have a look at this. This is going to show you how my method doesn't interfere with easier questions. So are there any fractions? No, so dealt with that. Are there any brackets? No, dealt with that. Is it an x or an x squared? It's an x. Oh, I just need to rearrange it, so I need to get x equals something. I think it's great to go through this checklist every time because it means you're always on the lookout for it, but for a simpler question like this, it doesn't actually interfere. It's just a little thing you go through because it means you're always just reminding yourself of the overall process. But it doesn't really change what you're going to do. Oh look, divide by 5. We've managed to get x on its own. X is 13 over 5. Ta-da! Some people then like to write it in the box, but let's not bother with that because we've got the answer now. That's sorted. Obviously, if it was an exam, put it in the answer box. I'm going to do another one where we don't need this system, but this system won't interfere. And then in a moment, we're then going to do one where this system it does add value. Okay, so are there any fractions? No, dealt with that. Are there any brackets? No, so that's dealt with that. Is it an x or an x squared? Well, I can definitely see an x squared, so it must be an x squared. So we're not going to be doing that. Instead, we need to make it equal to 0. Oh, it's already equal to 0. Why was it useful to do all those steps? Because it just confirmed that there was nothing else to do. And it gets us into the habit. Finally, so we need to factorize. Okay, let's have a go at this. When I factorize, the first thing is ask, is there anything in common with all of them? No, there isn't. So let's try double brackets. X times x makes x squared, so that's dealt with one end. Let's deal with this end next. That's either going to be 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. Oh, I'm going to shortcut here and just say I've spotted it's 2 and 3, but you might trial and error a bit and stuff like that. Oh, so that means that x equals minus 2 or x equals minus 3. Yes, there's more we can talk about there, but let's get a move on because we're just trying to do the general thing. We factorised it, we found the answer, all is good. If it couldn't factorise, we'd use the quadratic formula. Okay, so this is somewhere where I think this method really helps. And I've found that this removes the need to learn a lot of advanced techniques for solving equations if you just use this system all the time. That's what I've found with my students anyway. So first of all, let's deal with the fractions. There is a fraction, so let's get rid of that. So we'll times it by x plus 1. So that leaves us with 6 equals x times x plus 1. So again, this might be a bit fast, but I'm just doing it to illustrate. This is just an introduction to my approach. Are there any brackets? Yes, there are brackets. Let's deal with those, which means we'll expand to get rid of them. So 6 equals x squared plus x. So that's dealt with the brackets. Is it an x or an x squared? Well, it's definitely an x squared, so we're not going to be using that approach. Need to make it equal to 0, so I'm going to minus 6 from both sides. X squared plus x minus 6. Now I could put the equals 0 on either side. I'll put it on the right hand side because it's just what I'm used to looking at personally. So now we need to factorise. Is there anything they've all got in common? No, so let's try double brackets. How are we going to make minus 6? Well, first of all, we want to make x squared. That'd be x times x. The second thing we're going to try and do is make the minus 6. That could be minus 6 times 1, or 1 times minus 6, or minus 3 times 2, or 2 times minus 3. And in fact, it turns out that it's plus 3 and minus 2. You could have done that round the other way, so you could plus 3 minus 2. Anyway, and then you end up with x equals 2 or minus 3. Remember, if that hadn't factorised, you'd use the quadratic formula.